When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth, where we're exploring all sorts of business topics. Experts from around the world join me, your host, Diane Helbig, for a conversation where they share their expertise with all of you. Take what you need when you need it. Featured on Inc.com, Forbes, and MSNBC's Your Business, this podcast is recognized as one of the best podcasts for small business, sales, leadership, social media, and more. When it comes to business, Accelerate Your Business Growth has got it covered. And now on with the show. My guest today is Jim Huling. Jim is the global managing consultant for Franklin Covey's 4 disciplines of execution. In this role, Jim is responsible for the 4 disciplines methodology, teaching methods, and the quality of delivery worldwide. Jim also regularly, boy, that's a hard word for me to say, serves as an executive coach to a number of senior executives. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jim.
Diane, thank you. I'm so honored to be here today. And I did a little research on you. My goodness, congratulations on an incredible podcast and an incredible impact that you've been having. I'm honored to be your next guest in line today.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Coming from you, that is tremendous praise. I appreciate it. Thank you. And you are doing some outstanding work as well. You know, Franklin Covey is one of my favorite organizations. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. And I am curious what you are seeing out there in regards to changes and challenges to execution that leaders are facing these days.
Sure. It's a great question. And what a great way to begin, because frankly, anybody who's in charge of anything, whether it's a household or a PTA group or a major corporation, is probably facing some challenges right now they've never faced before. And so if I may, I'll answer your question by telling you something old but still here and something new that seems to be happening now. The old but still here is that it's really hard to get human beings to do something, in the way that you kind of want them to do it. So if you're a leader of a team and a company, or you're a leader of a nonprofit organization or a neighborhood association, whatever you are, you can't get to a new level without doing a new thing. Dr. Covey used to say, if you want to achieve a goal you've never achieved before, you simply must be willing to do things you've never done before, which is a wonderful quote, isn't it, Diane? And it always makes me a little angry, this quote, because, well, not really angry. I love Dr. Covey, but, he makes it sound so simple. And that second part, doing things you've never done before, that's what's hard,
Yeah.
So the old thing that's still with us is that different results require different behaviors. And human beings struggle to do things differently, don't we? I mean, that's why New Year's resolutions are such a cliche, because we have great aspirations and then it's hard to follow through. And the same is true in business. So an old thing that's still here, hard to make the changes needed to produce different results. Brand new thing, at least in my tenure, or never at this level before, I should say, is this thing we're all calling the Great Resignation. Is that the very moment people feel a degree of unhappiness, they just go somewhere else. And that is a relatively new thing, certainly at this volume. And if you don't mind, I'll just finish by saying something really quick. I want to make sure I'm not misunderstood about that. I think everybody should never be satisfied until they find a job they love. They do work they
Sure.
think that matters. I mean, my goodness, I'm at the age where I've earned the right to say life goes by faster than you could imagine. So yes, do that. If you're unhappy or you have an abusive boss or you have a company who violates your sense of integrity or ethics, find another place, no question. But the thing that's disturbing to me is that when things get harder now, and they are harder, then you've got this new challenge of people are very fast to say, well, I'm going to find another job. So that's an
Right.
old thing and a new thing. It seems to be the challenge today.
Okay. That sort of also feels like a leadership challenge to me. That, part of the reason that people are oftentimes dissatisfied is because they aren't being led well. Is that fair?
I think it's not only fair, it's really prophetic in a way, Diane. I mean, the two things you and I hope you'd agree, or tell me if you don't, I hope we're really careful about. Number one, everything that goes wrong is not the fault of the leader. And we both know that.
Yeah.
Anybody who's led anything knows that. You have a flawed human being attempting to lead flawed human beings where, we need a degree of grace and compassion with each other because we don't always know the answers and the right things. But
Right.
let's also say that it's accurate to note that there are many corporations who run the full gamut, some who are sort of innocently neglectful. They pass people over for promotions. They don't give raises that are deserved. They expect great results, but don't reinvest in their people in terms of training and personal
Right.
growth. They don't provide opportunities that people deserve to have. I mean, and maybe they're not malicious in it, but they're still neglectful, even if it's innocent. You have that, and then you have all the way on the other end of the spectrum. It's true. There are organizations that could only be rightly called abusive. So, and then somewhere in that mix are some truly great companies who take
Yeah.
great care of their people. So I don't mean to sound hard about this. I've been a leader all my life, and my heart aches for leaders who are in a quandary. But I also say there are a lot of people who are exercising their right to be happy right now. And they didn't do it before. They wanted the paycheck, they needed the job. And
Yeah.
suddenly now this thing is happening where people say, I'm going back, but I'm not going back to that. So that's a
Exactly.
real new thing, I think, that's perplexing a lot of leaders at the moment.
I do too. And then I think about what you just said, and I think leaders don't want people who aren't invested
Mhm.
in the goal,
Mhm.
where the organization is going. And so, in some way, I would think they'd be somewhat relieved to have people who were just phoning it in go
Mhm.
someplace else.
Yes, yes. They would, if I can hear all of them whispering in my ear right now, Diane, and they would say yes, so long as I can replace them,
Yes.
so I can
Yes.
find somebody who is engaged. And
Yeah.
it's I have a little small vocabulary that helps me simplify a complicated world. I'll just offer it real fast. Is that it seems to me if you are willing to oversimplify the great complexity of life, you can boil all members of a workforce into two categories. One category is they are compliant. So in other words, they'll do whatever you ask them to do, and they're mostly afraid of being fired. And in those environments, you find leaders who are predominantly authoritative. So, the rules are clear, but the consequences are clear too. And I sort
Yeah.
of grew up in this generation, Diane. I don't know about you, but my first boss said, that why do you think we call it work? Because it's not supposed to be
Right.
fun. And that was really true. That's not right, but it was really true,
Yeah.
those days. So you have authority-based cultures where the primary characterization of the working people, the teams, they're just compliant. They'll do what they're told to do. But the downside of that environment is they won't do anything more than what they're supposed to do,
Right.
right? And then you have this other side where you have leaders who are, instead of being oriented to using their authority, they are oriented toward getting people engaged, toward giving them a sense of purpose and value and mission. And they're in a sense saying, if you'll connect your dream to ours, we'll both get there together. Let's do something great together. And those people get all the way to commitment. So if you think about the two words I've tried to use carefully, one group is compliant, but the other group is committed.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's committed people who do everything great in the world. Everything remarkable that happens were people who went beyond the basic description of their job because they really believed in what they were doing. Well, today, I think people are leaving because they want to find this culture, where people are engaged, where my voice matters, where I may be junior on the team, but I might still have the best idea in the room. Can I have a voice? Can I say what I make my contribution? They want to be in places like that. And the people who do that are really going to win big in this year. And the people who don't, I'm concerned for them. I think they're really going to lose the really talented folks, and they'll be left with people who are not able to do quite as much.
I think the exact same thing. It's really a challenging time. Absolutely challenging. So let's talk some about strategy. Because strategy is, if I hear it at least once a day, that's not really surprising.
Right.
Strategic planning, it's a whole thing. But how good is the strategy really if it's not executed properly?
Yeah. Well, you really ask great questions, because like that question that is so perfectly worded, it allows me to say with a sense of freedom, utterly worthless. There's an ancient teaching that says, without a vision, the people perish.
Yeah.
And while that's a very dramatic saying, there's a lot of truth still today. So an organization or a team, or even just as I'm trying to say, including everybody, a neighborhood association or a PTA group, with no sense of where we're going, we just wander around. We literally can sort of die along the way, or quit, or walk away. So we have to have a strategy, or we won't ever get anywhere. But a strategy without execution is really just hallucination. It's just a dream, and the difference between strategy and execution, it reminds me a little bit. I'm a former CEO, and so I remember many times sitting in my office building a strategy, envisioning the future and thinking it was brilliant, and maybe occasionally thinking I was kind of smart. What a great strategy, and it was like a Spielberg movie in my head. It was all just going to go beautifully this year because of the strategy. And then I'd walk out of my office to where the people were and say, here's what we're going to do, and it didn't go the way I had imagined it. Have you ever heard that quote by Mike Tyson, who said, everybody has a fight plan until I hit him in the face?
No.
It's kind of like that. You have your strategy, but execution will hit you in the face because it's hard. It's hard to get that to happen. So, I don't want to say worthless. A vision is always a powerful thing, and it gives you a place to begin. But without execution, it doesn't make much difference in the world or in the people that you lead. So you've got to have both.
I find this to be so true that people set goals, but then they don't create the action plan to go about achieving that goal.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, and then they wonder why they're not there.
And the mystery is why they wonder. But we said at the very beginning, we're not, and anybody who's listening to this who leads anything, you haven't heard anything yet where Diane and I are saying, we're just dumping all this in the lap of all the leaders. Leadership is a problem. That's not it. Absence of leadership is part of the problem, but absence of other things is as well.
Right.
So then when you have these circumstances where many leaders are content, in fact, almost think it's the right thing, that their job is to say what we're going to do, and your job is to figure out how we're going to do it. Right? That's been around a long time. Even leaders who almost take a certain pride, in saying, I don't get involved in the details. My
Yeah.
job is to point the compass. Your job is to get there. It just sounds wonderful at the beginning. But if a person doesn't know how to get there,
Yes.
or if you've got lots of persons who all have different ideas about how to get there, then that's where leadership is required. So my basic pleading these days with all the executives that I coach and have the chance to influence is don't be content to just say what we're going to do. Be an active part of helping your teams figure out how we're going to do it, And if you have a heart and you want to do it well, try to help them figure out a way to do it by being smarter, not just working harder. If the only play you have in your playbook for how is just work more hours, you're not really helping us, Help us figure out a smart way to do it. And
Right.
that way we'll achieve what you want, but we'll also look at you like somebody who actually helps us, not somebody who just tells us what to do and then evaluates us, if we don't.
Right. It reminds me of this concept of, are you setting people up for success or are you setting them up
Yes,
for failure?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And I have a feeling, may I say this? I don't mean with any hubris. You've been thumbing through the four disciplines because you're really speaking the language of the four disciplines of execution. There's a way of doing these things that when we do them, you really are a leader. This is what leadership is helping people. And so setting a goal that's winnable. We write so often in the book, and I can tell it's in your language as well, people ask themselves all the time, is this a winnable game?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and if you set people on a path to a game that's not winnable, don't think for a minute they don't know it. They know it's
Yeah.
not win. They're closer to it than the leader is.
Right.
They knew it wasn't winnable long before you didn't know it. And so in that situation, again, people are asked to play an unwinnable game. What they'll do is they'll comply. They'll go
Yeah.
through the motions. They'll look busy whenever you're walking around. It's all human behavior, um, but they'll never commit because they
Mm-mm.
know it's like asking me to run a 4-minute mile. It's not happening. So, but if my job is hanging in the balance, I'm sure gonna put on my tennis shoes and go out there and look like I'm trying. But I know I can't do it, so I'm also not gonna die on the track because I know I
Yeah.
can't do it anyway, So I think a lot of leaders miss this. And if you don't mind me adding quickly to this is
Sure.
I think the worst version of this is a leader who knows that their team is capable of X and they set the goal at 1.5X. In other words, they think they're doing a good thing by setting a goal that is beyond the capability of the team. But in reality, they're sucking all the life out of the team from the moment they begin because the team knows it's not
Wow.
winnable, right? So the old thing about, your reach should exceed your grasp is a beautiful metaphor for how to think, but it's not a metaphor or a guideline for how to execute. When you want people to execute, you set up a game that's challenging, that's sort of, in our words, worthy, that represents the best we're capable of. Yeah, but don't go so far as to make it unwinnable. You know, uh, and then at the end of the year, when the team fails to hit the goal, try to come in and say, "Well, you guys, I'm happy with 80%. I'm going to call 80% a win. That's you really did what I wanted you to do." That's just gamesmanship with human beings. It's
Yeah.
one of the worst forms of manipulation, just goal setting thing. So we just say, be honest. Set a goal that requires the very best a team has to offer, and then make sure that that goal is balanced in the world of reality, that it is possible to achieve. You do that, and you can really fire people up. They'll work to win at a game that was winnable, but not one that was impossible.
Boy, that is really powerful. It's so interesting. Like, I am playing back in my head experiences that I had where the goal was set and was not attainable,
Yeah.
and how that felt.
Hmm.
And you still, if you're someone like who's wired like I am, where you're wired to try your hardest and do your best, you
Yes.
still go and try and do it. But somewhere
Yes.
in your head, you just know it's not going to happen. And then I had an experience where then I was penalized.
Oh my gosh.
Hitting
Yeah.
it. Mm-hmm.
That's awful. So to be
Mm-hmm.
penalized is like unconscionable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Presuming
Well,
you could know it was unwinnable. But to me, the worst one is the leader who comes in the end of the year and says, "Well, I really tricked you guys. All I really wanted was 80% of the goal. I didn't really want the whole thing anyway. I didn't think you could do it, but I just wanted to see what you would do." That's
isn't
the
that
worst.
demoralizing?
It's demoralizing. Well, think about a leader, think about a team that works all year to hit a goal and misses it. They're demoralized. They feel like failures, losers. Then the leader comes in, like Superman, and says, "I have great news. You really hit the goal because I only wanted 80% of what you did." Well, then you give them the goals for the next year. What's the first thing they're going to do? Math. They're
Right.
going to do math.
Yeah.
And honestly, from that day forward, you can never set a real, quote unquote, real goal again. Because
Right.
every goal you give that team for the rest of your career, they're going to assume it's a trick.
Yes.
So you'll never even know what the capacity of the team was. That's how pernicious this whole set the goal beyond what they can do. That whole mindset is so grounded in manipulation, honestly. And never before in our history have people been on the lookout. Isn't this, I hope you think this is true, Diane, been on the lookout for insincerity or inauthenticity
Oh,
in
sure.
leaders, right? They
Yeah.
smell it now. So imagine what that does to your leadership career, if you do that. The better way is to be
Wow.
honest, be transparent.
Yeah.
Here's a challenging goal. We're going to have to work really hard this year to hit it. But guys, we can do this. I think we can do this. That kind of message makes people rise up. I can almost hear Rocky music in the background, even if I'm role playing it for you. But the other way just doesn't work. And you do it
No,
once, you're kind of ruined forever.
definitely. Wow. That is great. Now, discipline 3 is keeping a compelling scoreboard.
Mhm.
So I'm so curious about this because I really believe in visual representations of
Yeah.
progress.
Yes.
Um, so talk to me some about like what
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
scoreboard does for morale,
Hmm. I love that. I
competition,
love that.
all those things.
Yeah, thank you. You're doing such a great job. We've discipline one was about knowing what we're going to do, and discipline two was about how we're going to do it. But if you'd let me add to that formula, I think discipline
Sure.
three answers the question of why should I care? It's one thing to know what, it's better to know what and how, but you don't really have a complete formula until every human being has an answer to the question of why. Why are we doing this? Why does this matter? And I think that's what discipline three goes to the heart of. And I don't mind saying this, quite plainly. I've been in leadership 44 years. I was CEO of a major corporation for 11 years. I've spent the last 13 years as the global managing consultant for Franklin Covey. I feel like I can speak with some credibility about leadership. And I'll use that credibility in order to say, I never understood this, that the way you keep score influences the way people play. I don't know if that's catching to your ear, but I hope it is
It
because
is. So explain
yeah,
that, please.
and you've already illustrated part of how that works. If but think about it just for a second. Most people listening to this broadcast, and again, whether they're, it's your PTA or your neighborhood association, or you lead a team at work, it's the same principle that's in play that we think last about keeping score. Don't you think this is true? Every leader in the world says, "Well, what are we going to do?" And then how are we going to know if we got there, and maybe even how are we going to achieve the goal? But then they always say, "Oh yeah, we'll figure out a way to keep score. Don't worry." My clients will say to me, "Jim, don't worry about it. We'll put a spreadsheet somewhere. Don't worry. We'll keep a tab somewhere. Don't worry. We'll keep the score. Don't worry about that part." And I just want to get on my knees and plead with them to say, "No, no, no. This influences everything, because the way you keep score influences the way people play, as long as they can feel that it's their score." You see, the great value of the score keeping mechanism, scoreboarding that we talk about in discipline three, which is keep a compelling scoreboard, is a way of keeping score that is designed to motivate people to want to win. Well, if the scoreboard is hidden on a multi-layered spreadsheet in the back of your laptop, and they only get to see it when you're willing for a minute to open up the laptop and put it on a projector or something, they have nothing there to give them the drive to feel they're playing a winnable game. But if you reverse that, and Diane, I feel like you and I are kindred spirits in this conversation, but I do think there's a lot of leaders right now who have one eyebrow arched about me and the things that I'm saying, like, oh, really? That if you reverse your whole process and you let the players create their own scoreboard, or you let them decide what their scoreboard looks like, where it resides, what's on it, what ornamentation does it have that makes it unique to our team? And maybe most importantly, how clearly does it tell us whether we're winning or losing? You let them do that, something really important happens. I want to say magical in my Irish heritage, but I'll be more businesslike and just say you're really important. Because when people have an opportunity to have their own scoreboard, they begin to feel that it's their own score. In other words, they own it. It's ours. It's not the division score or the corporation score or even my boss's score, which is frankly what about 98% of the world feels they're working toward, is their boss's score. They say, this is our score. If nurses in a hospital are tracking a declining number of operating room incidents, or if people in a retail organization are tracking a number of repeat customers or increased ticket prices, or people in a hotel are seeing rising engagement, you can get a whole team of people who say, we did that. That's ours. We did that.
Right.
And I can feel it right now. I almost I'm sort of pacing around my office. I got so much energy because this is powerful. In a world filled with apathy and sometimes cynicism about work, you can get people who play the game of winning at the goal like it was the world championship or the Olympic medal round. And then you get incredible results. But I'll tell you what's more important to me, even than the results, is you get people who become different people, who find something inside themselves they didn't know they had. They didn't know they loved accounting. Well, maybe not accounting. Maybe I picked it back.
Try another thing.
They didn't know they loved marketing, or maybe they knew, but they didn't know how much. But now they're caught up in this feeling of winning. And I may be giving you answers that are too long, my friend, is because your questions are so darn good. But I'll close on this with this one sentence: is it's sad to think about really how few people in the world have any sense that they're winning at work. Anybody's listening to you today, I would just challenge you right now. Do you feel like you're winning? Yeah, I'm not saying are you glad you have a job? Are you grateful for your job? Do you work hard at your job? Do you feel like your job's important? I got all that. You find that a lot in the world, especially today. But how often do you feel like you're actually winning? And most people would say, I don't remember the last time I felt like we were actually winning. We're mostly surviving around here, Jim,
Yeah.
So a great scoreboard, look at all that, a great scoreboard brings all of that into the equation. And then contrast that with my occasional client who will say, oh no, just skip that part, Jim. We'll figure that out. We'll put a spreadsheet somewhere.
Do you think, is there a reason that they, I was going to say avoid that, but I'm not even sure it's avoiding it. Maybe they don't think it's as important as is.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there are two things that are going on. Number one is avoidance. I mean, you were prophetic with that answer because first of all, if you're not confident that your team is going to have a good score, do you want that score publicly displayed? In the hallway on their way to the break room? Do you want, so there's a certain amount of confidence that goes along with that, but also that display is part of what motivates people to create a good score. So you have a little bit of chicken and egg, there, but I think avoidance is really one of those. And to be quite frank, I think a lot of times People don't want the accountability that comes with clear scorekeeping.
Right.
I mean, if I lead a team and we're missing our number and I know we're missing it and my boss knows we're missing it, but not a lot of other people really know we're missing it, I might be tempted in my lesser moments to just keep it that way, And a public scoreboard, it brings with it both incredible, powerful motivation, but it brings great accountability. And so I think that's the two reasons is avoidance of accountability, or maybe that public knowledge of how my team is doing. Those are the two things people seem to be the most concerned about.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because I was wondering about accountability, and because it feels like that what the scoreboard does is it just helps people, but doesn't it help people keep each other accountable?
Oh, yes, that's right. So beautifully said. And, I just love this discipline 4. I mean, I love discipline 3 too. You could tell in the way I was answering your question, but this is a real, this would be the biggest opportunity to me. If sadly only one little portion of our conversation could be public, I would kind of want this to be the most groundbreaking thing people had heard, because when you say accountability, virtually every human being in the world has a negative association with that. If you, I don't even know if you have a boss, Diane, but at some point in your life, you've had a boss. You can imagine if you got a text from your boss tonight saying, "Could you come in early tomorrow morning? I'd like to have an accountability meeting with you." There's not a single person in the world that's going to go, "Yeah." It's not happening. I promise. It's more like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done wrong, or what have I been caught doing, or something?" Then that's because we got all this baggage loaded into the word accountability. But when you think about accountability, if you open your mind just a little bit, it's one of the most powerful forces on earth. One, because we will do more out of a sense of accountability to the people we work with, usually, than we will do just to get a good performance review at work. People are far more reluctant to let down the people on the team than they are to endure their boss's disapproval for a moment. And so in the 4 disciplines, discipline 4 is about establishing a cadence of accountability, making that a regular part of how a team operates. And when we do it, we try to make it simple by saying there's really 2 kinds of accountability, and we want both. One is vertical accountability. So you to your boss, we want you to have that. That's powerful. And that's, that's part of what drives us. If you've ever played tennis without a net, it's not much fun. We need to be accountable. We need goals and standards and things that encourage us to be our best. So me to my boss is vertical accountability. But one of the great learnings Chris and I have had over this 13-year journey with this material is that the greater accountability, and that's the surprise to most leaders, is when people can feel accountable to each other. We call that horizontal accountability. So we do it in this really simple way. I mean, I think it will stun people listening to your broadcast, is that every single week, the whole team gets together for about 15 minutes. And in that meeting, every member of the team, including the leader, makes a verbal commitment out loud for what they're going to do this week to influence the scoreboard. So you go one by one by one by one. Sometimes they stand in a circle, on the manufacturing shop floor, or sometimes they sit around a conference table, or sometimes they're on the phone or on Zoom, but regardless, each person says out loud to everybody on their team, here's what I personally commit to do this week to move our score. And then 1 week later, we have that same meeting, and everybody goes around the circle and says whether they did what they said they were going to do or not. So it is literally the most fundamental, simple form of accountability you could ever have. It's one human being committing to other human beings, eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder, right there together. And then 1 week later, saying out loud, I did it or I didn't. And that small behavior, I don't have a better word, and I'm sorry it's a little flowery, than transformational. It literally transforms not only how a team executes, but it transforms how they feel about each other. We've all been on teams where you like 2/3 of the people, but there's 1/3, you're just not so sure. Well, you go 52 weeks of the year and you watch those people make a commitment and keep it, and make a commitment and keep it, and make a commitment and keep it. And you will not only start to respect them, you'll learn to trust them. You'll learn through experience that if they say they'll do it, they'll do it. It's transformational. But it also, in the context of our conversation today, drives incredible results by reducing it all to one simple personal commitment from every single member of the team, followed through on every single week.
Well, and my gosh, what's so interesting about that for me is that it's not, if you just do it and you do it consistently, it's not hard. It's not uncomfortable.
Right. That's
it's
right.
The thing that you're doing.
That's right.
It just becomes part of the process.
Yes.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
well said. And there are a lot of, multi-million-dollar football coaches today relating that same advice, trust the process is a really great advice, for everybody. But it is amazing. I like the way you just rephrased it, that it takes a very large goal, reduces its complexity by being clear about how you're going to achieve it, further reduces the complexity by being clear about why you should want to achieve it, and then finally reduces the complexity one last time by saying, you don't even have to think about the entire goal or the entire journey. Just be crystal clear about what you're going to do this week, and then always follow through.
Right.
So it's like a formula for reducing the complexity of anything down to a very manageable piece that you do every single week.
Well, and I think that's one of the keys to actually executing is because what I have found working with small business owners is they get so overwhelmed with the how huge the goal is that they can't see how they're going to get there. And then when we say, okay, wait, what do you just have to do right now?
That's right.
Just start that process going. That's easy.
That's right. That's right. And the only thing 40X would add to what you said, it was otherwise a perfect formula, is what are you going to do toward this one particular outcome? So we wouldn't just do anything that helped the business. In 40X, we just add that one little extra layer toward so you want more customers this year? Great. You want higher quality product? Great. You want more revenue? Great. But let's be clear so that all of our little actions march us toward a very large result.
Yeah.
That's 40X.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Okay. Now, in regards to that, I have a question about limiting the number of goals you focus on. Why is that so necessary?
That's right. I love this question, and I almost feel like, it's a confessional kind of question for me, because when I was in all the leadership roles that I've had, I fell victim to the same thing everybody else does. I could always see everything that needed to be done. I'm sure you can, right? As a incredibly successful influencer that you are, you probably got 20 things circulating in your head right now, even while we're having this conversation. It's just natural, right? We're all sort of like air traffic controllers that have 100 planes in the air that all want to land. Well, the worst thing we can do, especially in that metaphor, is try to land them all. That's the worst thing we do. We're going to crash, right? So the beauty of 40X is it says, get really clear about the one outcome that will be your breakthrough for this time period. And time period can be 6 months or a year, whatever you like it to be. We don't like much longer than a year because people tend to see that as being too far away. But 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, great time frame. What's the one outcome that would represent a real breakthrough? Let me get super clear on that. And then let me make weekly commitments to that. Let me have a great scoreboard for that. Let me get really clear about the how for that. And then everything else in my business is secondary or separate from that one thing. So our phrase these days is whirlwind. That's everything in your life. That's all the planes that are circling in your business plus one. So you have your whirlwind, which is your day-to-day, phones that have to be answered, copier paper that has to be reordered, I don't know, whatever they trucks that need maintenance, whatever your business is, you've got a whirlwind because that's what you do all day. But you never forget you've got this one breakthrough result you've got to do. So whirlwind plus one. The one is what you use 40x for.
I see.
Makes sense. And I know something you were referencing. I should have incorporated it, but I'll say it real quickly if I may. Is you violate that principle. The greatest temptation any leader has is, well, in fact, it's automatic, Diane. They'll say to me, well, Jim, could we have two? Or what about three? Could we have three? Want to negotiate, right away, even though I've explained the principle. And the best answer I know is those of us that can remember high school probably learned a principle called the law of diminishing returns, which, in layman's terms means the more things you spread your focus across, the less you actually accomplish. Well, that turns out to be true in goal setting. So it's an absolute promise. The more goals, the more measurable targets you give your team, the less they are going to achieve. They'll work hard, If you think about the capacity of a human being is finite. Even those of us that want to dream about being infinitely capable, we're just not. We have a limit. So take that amount of energy, whatever that is, and spread it across 20 things. And what you'll find is that you try to work on all 20 things, but at the end of every week, you're exhausted. And your contribution to each of those 20 things is so tiny that it made no difference at all.
Right.
You wore yourself out for really no benefit.
Right.
And then flip that over and say, all right, but what if it was one? And so all of my available capacity, which is above my whirlwind, after, above answering the phones and the things that have to be done, my whirlwind plus one, on that one, what if I gave that all of my available, maybe 15% of my week I can squeeze out. It's available. The other 85% is just running the business, but I've got 15% I can put into something. Well, we're just simply saying you're far better off to put all 15% into the one thing that is a real breakthrough for you than to spread that 15% across 15 or 20 small things and have almost nothing to show for it at the end.
I'm totally on board with that. One of the things that I say is you can do anything you want, you just can't do it all at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And even to a leader, you think about creative, ambitious, talented, energetic people. They don't want to do less. They want to do more.
I know.
Right? So they have then this almost an addiction that every time we have a great idea, we have to do it.
Yeah.
Of course we have to do it, right? But I will promise you, as my friend Chris is fond of saying, there will always be more great ideas than you can execute.
Yes.
There always will be. So why not put a harder eye on it? Why not select the one thing? If we could open a second location this year, that would be the single biggest thing that would impact our business. Okay, great. Now let's set up a discipline around opening that second location. So every single week, everybody on the team is going to make a commitment. What are you going to do to help us get that second location open over and above your regular job? We're going to squeeze out 15% of our capacity somewhere, or 10%. I'm just making that number up.
Yeah.
But we're going to always put that into one thing, not into 5 things. Think about what could happen in a team.
Exactly. And how much faster?
How much faster? And then at the end of it all, just to bring this intangible back into the conversation, the whole team would say, hey, yeah, we did that. We opened that location. That's ours. We did that. Wait till you see what we're going to do next year. That's how you get a team like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is great. I love this. And I am so grateful for you, to you for joining me and having this conversation. It's just energizing, which is makes it so much even better for me. Will you please tell the listeners how they can learn more, how they can find you?
Oh, of course.
Anything you think they should know?
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, I just preface that answer by saying, you have made a great conversation because you clearly did some homework. You asked great questions in just the right way, and we covered all the topics. So I'm very honored at the obvious amount of preparation you did that for us to be able to have a great conversation. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
And anybody that wants to know anything about Four Disciplines, there are three things that are really important. Number one, the Four Disciplines book was actually written about 10 years ago, but this year we launched the second edition of that book, and it has 30% new content. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in what you've heard today, there's a really good book, new out on the market. Make sure you buy the second edition so that you get the latest and the greatest. And everything we've talked about today is in that book, plus a lot more of instruction and some compelling examples from companies around the world that have done it. Secondly, if you're interested in going virtual, learning more, franklincovey.com is exactly the place to go. It's all one word, FranklinCovey, franklincovey.com. And then when you hit that main page, just click Four Disciplines. And there's more out there than you probably have time to read today. So lots and lots of things. But the best of all, there's some wonderful videos, case studies, things of that nature. And then last but not least, both Chris and I are incredibly active on social media. We post something almost every day about execution. You can find us on Facebook, social media, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I hope I said them all. Yeah, and we're on all of those every single day, talking about leadership, about life, and about execution. And we hope on a daily basis we give you some new and challenging ideas to think about all the time.
That's terrific. Thank you. That is wonderful, and I'll make sure in the show notes that information is there so people
Wonderful.
can find you. I know I'm getting the book.
Thank you, my friend.
So great. Oh my gosh, Jim, this was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I really
you.
appreciate it.
I'm very sincere. No wonder you're in the top 100 podcast because you are really good at what you do. And I have probably done maybe 30 this year podcasts, and the industry, like all industries, has people who approach it as professionals and those who don't.
Yeah.
And man, you can tell the difference. And today it's just categorically one of the best podcast experiences I've had. So congratulations, but also thank you for making it such a pleasure.
Thank you. That's huge. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, a production of Evergreen Podcasts. Discover more episodes of this podcast and explore others at evergreenpodcast.com. As always, continue to prosper and be curious. And if you're looking to get your sales strategy headed in the right direction, pick up a copy of Succeed Without Selling on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We out.